Good evening, Kip Truth family and Facebook family. We are elated tonight because we have a very, very special guest with us this evening, sharing with us in this installment of Uncomfortable Conversations. We have with us Dr. Sharri Coleman, adjunct professor from the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. It is such a wonderful, wonderful privilege to have her and share with us in this space the distrust that people of color and minority community has with medicine and vaccines and medical practitioners. So I just want to yield the floor in this moment just to give Dr. Coleman an opportunity to just share with us a little bit about herself and her background.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Briggs. It is an honor to be here with your students and with your families online. I am Dr. Sharri Coleman, as he said, the adjunct professor at the University of Oklahoma. I'm also an internship counselor in one of our high schools here, as well as what else? I don't know. I'm a minister of music at my church. I'm just all over. I'm actually a trained podiatrist, and that's a foot and ankle doctor. And God had jokes and had me to go another way. And so I'm excited to be able to use my medicine, my knowledge of medicine, even at the university level, and to teach about African-American history with that. So I'm sure I'm here because I teach actually African-American health issues at the university. It's one of the classes that I do teach during the summer and each semester. And we talk about probably some of the same things that you've been discussing with your class. So I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this conversation.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing with us. I just really want to dive in on some things with regards to what our students have had an opportunity to share in unit lessons. In our class, Humanities of Truth, we've been able to cover information and topics regarding Tuskegee studies, as well as Henrietta Lacks. And when I tell you there were some jaws that dropped when we were covering the content and sharing the information, could you just share with us a little bit background history on that, if you will?
Yeah, so one Tuskegee, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, many people think that it is that the government actually injected these men, and that is not the case. What happened was that the United States, the public health department decided to go in, and they were doing a study on syphilis, right? And then after a year of, giving them injections, some of them had a placebo. So, are we going to cure it? What's going on? How do we get rid of syphilis? Because it was not just in the Black community, it was, you think about the medical knowledge that we have now in 2021, they did not have that then. So it was a part of experimentation. What was probably duplicitous about the study was they went to poor Black men in the country. And so they promised them things like burial insurance, which is important because if somebody dies, it was very important to be able to lay your loved one to rest. So that was something that got them in. Meals, things like that, little stipend, that got them in the door. And so they really kind of preyed on these African-American men. What happened was after the year, they ran out of money, decided to, I guess, pull out of Macon, Georgia. And then guess what? They didn't tell the men that they were not being cured for syphilis, right? So they were studying the effects of syphilis, where the men thought that they were actually being treated for syphilis. And so that was disturbing. That was a 40-year-long study. It didn't come to the end, or there was no apology until President Clinton actually made an apology years and years later. And so when people hear Tuskegee, they hear the experimentation, they hear government, they're red flags that go off, right? But even before then, I also teach out of a book, Medical Apartheid. And that actually chapter 7 is syphilis. But before then, we talk about slave medicine. So you mentioned before we began here, one of your students mentioned that an author said that medicine as we know it today, much of it was built on the backs of African Americans, right? Or Africans, enslaved Africans. And it was, there's so many cases. There's a case where any parents on the call tonight, any women on the call know about gynecology, right? Women's health. Well, the father of gynecological medicine, actually the tool that he perfected, he invented, that is used on women today, he practiced on slave women. And he did so without anesthesia. So imagine, listen, I can get cut and you say, you go to the doctor and they say, okay, I'm going to sew you up, but I'm going to shoot you with some pain medicine. They did not do that. First of all, there was this misnomer that Africans and African Americans didn't feel pain like everyone else. So they took, of course, and at that time, slave woman, she couldn't object. She was property, basically. And so there was no objection at that point. So here she is on the table without any anesthesia. Anna Carr, I think, had, it might be about 18 surgeries that they performed. So it's funny, Black women and white women were seen as totally different species. However, they used the bodies of Black women to experiment. So then it was time to they perfected it on Black women and then used it on white women with anesthesia. That's a problem.
That is so profound. The point that you made, that Black women, white women are looked at as completely different species, yes. But then they are using Black bodies, brown bodies, as test subjects to try and make breakthroughs in the sciences. That's remarkable. Yes. And it also speaks to a number of moral and ethical issues at play from the standpoint of making the assumptions that Black people don't feel, African people or people of African descent don't experience pain. I think there's so much to unpack in that. What was the title of that book again?
So that is Medical Apartheid, and the author is Harriet Washington.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And is this an older book or is this a new piece?
It was written in 2010.
Okay.
And so it's funny because you can find some information about her, but what she noticed, she was doing some research. I believe she was on the East Coast, and she realized as she was going through files, there were two gentlemen in the hospital at the same time. One Caucasian gentleman, one African-American gentleman, maybe about the same age. What she noticed was in the files of the white gentleman, it talked about, his family. He's a family man. He comes, has a wife and blah, blah, blah. And so it was just this wonderful introduction to who this gentleman was. And then it went into whatever the ailment was. When she looked at the same time of an African-American patient who was actually kept on the other side of the hospital, right? She realized Black male, 61, blah, 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 just straight. And so there was something that sparked, I guess, her interest. And she said, let me go back in history and let me begin to study how white men and how Black men were treated differently in the medical system. And so through years of studying and paperwork and gathering information, she came up with the book Medical Apartheid, and then went into, slavery times and finding those stories of Anarcha, or even Mr. Brown, another gentleman that's in the book, where they wanted to test the effects of heat stroke. And what does the sun do? First of all, the fact they believed that Africans didn't suffer from heat stroke, which is why they would put them out there in the field to work. Like, okay, you're stronger than us. You can withstand that. But what they did was, excuse me, in a let's say a little pit, right? And they would heat it with coals and put him in a chair, and he would pass out every day. Then they take him out. And then the next day, he'd faint, whatever. They bring him back to the next day. They put him back in to test him some more because they wanted to see, well, what happens if it's excessive heat? What happens? Is he going to burn? So by the time he does this, imagine him having burns all over his body, right? Imagine the anytime somebody's out in the sun for a long time, heat stroke, you have headache, you're in pain, you probably think you're dying, right? And so here, there was no way that Mr. Brown could stop that because he was property. He was property. So yes, your student is correct. Much of the medicine we practice today and much of the information we have has been built on the backs of Africans.
That's a remarkable story. And this is a book that, I'm going to make sure that I grab, because it's so much information there that I'm certain that there are many other people who aren't aware of the history. We have our distrust, based on, two figures that I mentioned before and a handful of others. But to know that, this has been a consistent thing that predates even those matters. It was something that I was really intrigued by, why it is that Black and brown bodies have historically been used as test subjects, is because we couldn't object to it, right? That's something that you stated, like we had no choice in the matter. We had no say so. So thank you for sharing that. I want to move now toward the coronavirus vaccinations, right? That was the gist of us having those conversations with our students, because they have a lot of opinions. Something that can be said about this pandemic in which we are in: our students have become more well-read regarding science, for the simple matter that they want to know, what is this thing? What is this virus that is just really, really, really causing some issues within society? And so just share with us a little bit. We've heard so much information from different news pundits. What is some information concerning coronavirus vaccinations, or just vaccinations in general, that can be trusted? How do we know that the information is true?
So I did a little talk on one of our local news stations, and they were asking about, the Black community and how do we get it out? And we should tell all of our churches. I said, oh, hold on, please. I tell people, first, you need to do your research, right? So the stories that we talk about, the stories that we mentioned earlier, there are other stories like in the 80s and 90s with young African-American males. And based on if your older brother got caught up in the jail system, somehow you were treated a little differently. So, it happens all the time. So we're not going to act like it doesn't happen. That's not just slave medicine. That is real today. So I bring that out because I want everyone to understand much of what we experience today with race, medicine, it's baked in the cake of this country. To say it's baked in the cake. The systematic racism is a real thing. African-American and neighborhoods and people of color being targeted is a real thing. So how do I separate having all of this information about what happened in the past? Now, all of a sudden, here, it's time for COVID-19 comes on the scene. Now, what do we do? And so it's very valid. First, when people say, oh, that's old stuff. No, I just need you to understand that it did happen. And I also need you to understand I'm a little hesitant because of that. Okay, we're all a little hesitant. Now, since that time, initially they were talking about going into communities of color first. And so I was like, oh, no, let's not do that. So that's when I brought all those cases out and I talked about the distrust. What I have realized is our communities are not the frontline people. So technically they've gone in to get those frontline workers, your doctors, your nurses, policemen, firemen. That's like the first tier, right? Your first responders. And then the second tier would be educators, right? They've also targeted senior citizens, anyone older than 65. And what they realized, because what happens is if you have an underlying health, if you're of age, 65 and up, you probably have some other underlying health conditions, okay? Which makes coronavirus very much let's say it likes to prey on you. So, some people that are watching now, you may have had a family member and hey, it was like a common cold, right? You may have been sick a couple of days. Maybe you didn't feel well. Maybe, oh, my head was pounding. Oh, I lost my taste and smell. But there are other people who, just because they're above 65 with underlying health conditions, just because they might be obese, might have high blood pressure or hypertension, might have diabetes, right? And oftentimes you see that in communities of color. They're called comorbidities. So they're things that we're already been dealing with as a generation or as people of color. Now here comes this virus on top of that. And so it's like it's like a punching bag, right? So if you were relatively healthy, like you said, it might be a common cold, right? But those individuals 65 and up, anybody, communities of color, because so many of us have comorbidities, also because so many of us live in, let's say, multi-generational homes. So whereas, let's say I have a 16 and a 20-year-old, the 16-year-old is in the house. He may go and his is a cold, right? He comes home. Maybe one of us, can deal with it. Maybe it's not. But imagine if one of our parents lived in the home. And so here is the younger child who's been in school, who's been out in the world, come into the house to an older person with comorbidities. No symptoms here, but it takes grandma out. And so you have to look at it, because in many of our homes, they are multi-generational. So even if you don't have a comorbidity, just think of the part of your home. Think of who lives there. Think of who you interact with. Does grandma keep the youngest grandchild, right? So you want to make sure that you are vaccinated if that's what you decide. Because here's the thing. People are saying, well, why, I don't know. I don't want to get vaccinated. It's like, what's your option? And the fact that they are no longer targeting, like I said, when it was hypothetical and they were talking about going to the Black community first or communities of color, I was leery. Like, no, ma'am, no, sir. That's not going to happen. But when I realized there are white people, affluent white people running to get this vaccine. So a little bit of that, it's like, maybe they're not targeting me. But if you actually look at the studies, African Americans and people of color are the lowest people who are being vaccinated. I think the other day we were doing something that's like 3% in the state of Oklahoma so far. That number is horrible. Yet we're the ones that are dying at a faster rate. But we die at faster rates with anything anyway. And oftentimes it's because of lack of health insurance, access to healthcare. For many of us, if we're speaking honestly, our emergency room is our primary care physician, right? So if mom and dad are working to put food on table, they're trying to make ends meet. They may not be able to sit at a Fortune 500 company. I may be a service worker and I may not have health insurance. So if I get sick, I know, oh Lord, I'm going to have to pay a whole lot of money. So I may wait until the last minute anyway to ever go to the doctor. That's why even I know this is a total aside, but I talk about this in my classes. So even breast cancer in general, white women over 35 are affected and infected more than African-American women. However, African-American women die at a higher rate. And why is that? Because you think of someone who has a really good job, really good health insurance. Oh, I don't feel well. Let me call the doctor and make an appointment. Somebody who doesn't have health insurance. And sometimes in our community, let me pray about it. Let me try this, let me try this route. Let me try something else. And then by the time I actually do get to the doctor, because either I'm in so much pain or, everything is just going haywire, I'm already at a stage 3 or stage 4 of cancer. So that's why the incidence rate of death is higher, even though Black women don't contract it faster than white women. So there's so many complexities when you look at medicine and you look at communities of color. What I say to your students to be leery, I say still read. You mentioned your kids have been reading and researching. the vaccine itself is not, they're not injecting you with the coronavirus. Okay, I watched a special with Tyler Perry. He actually talked to some doctors in Atlanta, and I would advise you to show it to your students or your parents. It was actually great. He had two physicians who were in the studio with him, and they had a conversation. And the Black lady, she was off the chain. I love her. She mentioned how, and I may say incorrectly, but I'm just going to give her the gist of what it is. So whatever the COVID-19, if you've seen pictures of it, you've seen those little spikes on it. So those are spike proteins. And so what they're using is messenger RNA, inject that goes in and kind of blocks those spike proteins, right? It attacks that. So when so with the first shot, just like the reason, kids are immunized as babies is so that if they're ever faced with a real disease, the body already says, oh, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Okay, I've been vaccinated. Oh, wait a minute, this is not supposed to be here. And so what now happens is after that first shot, the body begins to set up an immune response. And it's like, oh yeah, come on, bring it on. Then the second shot, which of course gives us to about 95% or 98% efficacy. Then it's like, wait, you do not belong here. And it immediately starts to attack, right? It builds up an immune response and attacks the messenger RNA. And after a while, the messenger RNA just falls off and you're fine. But it's funny. So if anyone has been vaccinated, actually my brother, he drives a truck. And so today was his second vaccine. And so he sent it in the family text like, hey, pray for me, I'm going in. His first shot was fine. So I had to remind him, okay, I need you to understand when you take this shot, you might feel like you're sick for the next 24 to 48 hours. It is not the coronavirus. They did not inject you. In fact, if your body reacts, that's saying that the first vaccine is actually doing what it was supposed to do. So now you have such an immune response that that you're killing, when the coronavirus actually does enter your body, we know because that second shot, you're like, oh yeah, you don't belong here. And so the whole point is, here's another thing. So once you are vaccinated, did you know that you can still come in contact with the virus? The point of vaccination is that it just becomes like a common cold or flu-like symptom. So you're sick for a few days. It's to keep you from going and being put on a ventilator, right? So it's not that it goes away. Everybody gets vaccinated, it goes away. The whole point of it is you don't wind up dying from coronavirus. I probably said 10 things. I don't even know what you asked me.
No, I mean, everything that you said, I'm just it really has my wheels turning. And okay. I think the conversation that is really, really important based off of something that you shared was that, hey, this vaccine is not the cure, right? This vaccine is not the cure. And not only that, what they're putting into your body with this vaccine is not the coronavirus. When we think about flu shots, I shared this story with our students that, in the past, whenever I would get a flu shot, the few times that I had, I would always, get these symptoms that I did not like feeling. And so for years, I went without getting a flu shot. But time rolled around for us to take flu shots this year. And my son, who's a year and a half, he'll be 2 years old in July. His doctor said that, hey, Mom, Dad, you both need to get your flu shots. I was like, oh God, but I was sharing with colleagues, and I was sharing with students that, this is the first fall and winter that I've not gotten sick at all. I knocked on wood as I said it. Right. The first time that I've not gotten sick at all. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just important that our language is very meticulous in communicating what the vaccination is and what its intent is, or what the intent behind it is when you take it. I think we have time for one more question. Mm-hmm. If you could just help us to kind of figure out a path to chart or navigate or maneuver with regards to restoring the confidence of Black and brown people regarding vaccinations in the medical practice?
So one of the things I'm always mindful of is oftentimes going to the victim and asking them, well, how can we make this better? Right? That's like going to somebody who has been attacked and saying, now, how could this not happen? I wasn't the attacker. So maybe you need to talk to the attacker. Or when people say, asking, us as African Americans or people of color, what are we going to do about racism? I didn't start it. Right. So there's some other conversations that need to be had outside of the community to say, how do we gain the trust? How do we regain the trust of communities of color? Right. So it's not our job to figure out, okay, I'm going to trust the government. Oh, no, I'm not. Even today, even if I tell you, hey, go get the vaccine, I'm not saying trust the government. Right. I'm saying read, do your research, find out what is right for your house. Don't be afraid. Now, once you get all the information, all the things that I talked about, and you understand, yes, this was built in the cake of this country, right? I understand that. Now let's dissect it and let's figure out, am I still being targeted as an African American, right? So even, like I said, when I did the television interview, it was a hypothetical. They had not started, disseminating the vaccine. All I heard was, let's go to the Black community. And I said, slow your roll. Now that it's here, and I realized again, that we're not even the first tier. The first tier, those frontline workers, I would hasten to think that they're trying to take the frontline workers out. Right. So part of that, maybe even that has helped to boost my not even trust of the government, but the trust that the vaccine is not directed towards me. Now, as a person of color, now I need to make it accessible to those in my community to say, just because we've heard some things before, don't allow that to stop you from taking care of your health now. Right. So that means you need to talk to your physician. You need to talk to some other African-American healthcare workers. My understanding that messenger RNA, because people were leery of the vaccine because they said it happened too quickly. Well, messenger RNA has been around for a long time. Right. It's just that all of the paperwork and the bureaucracy that normally takes place when you have to get something FDA approved and then it has to go to this, they said it may sit on somebody's desk for 3 months and then to go to the next step, that's another 6 weeks. So all they did was cut the red tape, but messenger RNA has been going on for a long time. They've been using it for other things. So that's just something else that some people may say, another thing I heard, well, I'm going to wait, because I probably said it too. I'm going to wait to see if somebody's toe falls off. I'm going to wait till the second one. But there have already been people who were in a year-long study. So when this started in March, we're almost a full year of being in the pandemic, being shut down. There were people from the very beginning who had been vaccinated. They didn't know if they were taking placebo. They were doing some things with them, or if they actually had the actual vaccination. And so some of them are being, I forgot what they call it, when you're in a closed study and then you unblind yourself. So you find out which did I get a placebo? Did I actually get the vaccination? So we have at least 6 to 9 months of research to say that these are some of the side effects, but these things won't necessarily happen either. So if you got it today, you won't be the first. There have been people that at least have had it for 9 months.
Wow. I'm going to say that is like such a huge relief, because I had so many students saying, Mr. Briggs, I'm not trusting that vaccine. I read somewhere where it takes 7 years for a vaccine to be fully worked out and approved, right, and things of that nature. Right. That gives me a great relief to know, yeah, that this is not something that they just concocted and, pulled a hocus pocus overnight and gave us just something thrown together. This is, I promise, going to be our last question for you. Thank you so much for taking time out, sharing with us. So, and it's a 2-part question.
Okay.
One, these different strands that are popping up, that they're saying the current doses of vaccinations won't kind of help protect us against.
Mhm.
I want you to speak to that. And then the second part is the vaccines that are made by different companies. Should
Okay.
we be concerned about that? Should we be trying to find out, like, well, wait a minute, what company produced this vaccine? Speak to
Right.
that, if you would.
Right. So let me hit the vaccine first. I believe it's Pfizer and Moderna who are out there, the two shots. And I think both of them are over like somewhere between 93 and 98% efficacy, meaning by the time you get that second shot, then your infection rate or is much lower, right? It has it just has the efficacy is better. The Johnson and Johnson, which some people say I'm going to wait because it's a one shot, right? But it's only 60% or somewhere in that range of efficacy, which means you have a higher chance if the coronavirus is in the air and you come in contact with it. Would you rather be at 95% or 65%? So the whole point is, but if there are people that just will not get a shot at all, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to get it, I'm only going to get it once and that's it. I'd rather you be 65% covered instead of 0 and on a ventilator. Right. So those are the three right now. As far as, what was your first question?
So the first question was just regarding the different strands that are popping up that we're not, we don't know what will work against those.
Right. So in any of viruses can always mutate, right? So even COVID-19 is a mutation. It's all part of the SARS virus. So it's been around for years and things just mutate. However, I don't know how it started, in a lab somewhere. I don't know. The key to it is, right. So the question is, well, if I'm vaccinated now, will that other strand, which they say is actually more deadly, right? Talks about not being covered, which is why we still have our face masks, right? Which is why we still wash our hands, which is why we still remain socially distanced, even if you're vaccinated. Because what happens is it has to be a certain amount, they call it herd immunity. So either enough people have had to get the coronavirus and recover from it, or enough people vaccinated, right? Where now we're all in the majority, we're all together. And after a while, it just kind of snuffs out the virus. The virus can really no longer just attack. Like right now, there's so many people who have not been vaccinated, who have not gotten it. If coronavirus is in the air, hey, fresh meat, let's go. Right? So the point of herd immunity is so that there are enough of us that have had either the vaccine or had the virus itself, that it doesn't affect us. It really can't, it kind of dies out because I can't jump from host to host. I kind of die out, right? But they're saying that's not going to happen until the fall. So even if you get the vaccine, you still have to wash your hands, sanitize, your face mask. The reason why you just said something, Mr. Briggs, that you did not get sick this winter. Part of it is because why? You were isolated from people. And if you went out with people, you were quite vigilant about washing your hands, right? You always made sure you had a mask on, which protects other people, but it also protects you because all that stuff is not in the air. So technically, all of us have probably been less sick because we've been more vigilant. So imagine had we continued life like we go on and we're, in the store. Now I go in the store. If it's too many people, I'm out. I will order my groceries. I'm not fooling with y'all because somebody's walking around without a mask. I'm not playing it, So I think part of that is you made a decision. I'm going to take care of myself. So you're not touching everything. You're being mindful about putting things on your face. Now you have a child. You're really mindful about what, do I need to take my clothes off when I come from a grocery store or when I finish teaching school or I'm walking through the mall somewhere? Yeah, maybe you should leave your clothes in the laundry room or take your shoes off so you're not trekking outside dirt. So that's probably why you have not been sick, because you've been more vigilant. So it behooves all of us to be a little more vigilant. Let's just wait this thing out, guys. It's going to be okay. As we get vaccinated, yes, we're going to begin to build an immunity, but you still have to be safe. And here's the other thing with the other mutations that are coming. The thing about coronavirus is, just like you get a flu shot every year, the question is, will we need boosters? So even once you've been vaccinated this year, you know, just like the flu changes every year. And so some people can still get the flu because it was a different strand of the flu that they were vaccinated against. So it's kind of the same thing. Again, we have to be vigilant. So continue with your mask, continue washing your hands, and you stay away from me. I need 6 feet between us, maybe 10.
You're absolutely right about that. I can't thank you enough, Dr. Coleman, for sharing with us, taking time out of your busy schedule. We know that you are a wife, you are a mother, you are a professor, you wear so many hats and you wear them so well. But we're grateful that you took time out of your schedule to share with us. And I sincerely do believe that this information will be very vital to our learning community, to help us to be more educated and move forward in a vigilant way to fight against all of that which is out there waiting on us. Just being very, very cognizant and aware of how to take care of ourselves and others. Thank you so much again, Dr. Coleman. Is there any way that someone who's watching tonight might be able to reach out to you or follow you? Instagram, social media. Do you have any handles?
So social media, on Instagram and Twitter, I am Soul to Soul Doctor. So that's SOUL 2, the number 2, Soul, SOLE, because I'm a foot doctor. Doctor, Soul to Soul Doctor. That's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just my name, Sharri Coleman. They want to shoot an email. I'm at OU, so slcoleman@ou.edu. I just want to encourage all of your students. You told me about your students, your 5th through 8th graders that are doing the thing, right? They are reading, they're educating themselves. And listen, if you start now, you won't stop. So you'll be 25 and still an avid reader. You'll be 35. And you keep doing what Mr. Briggs has said, that he's been bragging on you guys, right? At some point, you will be sitting in this chair talking to somebody, because somebody will be asking you. So keep reading, keep studying, keep doing whatever you need to do. And Mr. Briggs is a pretty cool cat. He's a pretty cool dude. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you to all of our KIP Truth Academy family, team and family for, just joining in, being a part of this conversation. Again, this will be posted and edited and posted again for review. Thank you so much again, Dr. Coleman. You all have a blessed night.
Good night.